Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today we're going to really get into understanding a little bit of the arena of mental health. And last season we talked about it a little bit, but very rarely do you get someone in the field to come and share their story of how they took the road to the mental health industry. Today, I am pleased, honored, and happy to have Miss LeLyne Joyner from Indianapolis to come into the studio and share with us her impactful journey into the world of therapy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
So tell the viewers a little bit about who you are before we get started.
So I got my license as a marriage and family therapist. In 2009, I started my own practice. So I've been meeting with individuals, couples, families, to help them navigate just a variety of situations in their lives. Reunification, I just started as a reunification therapist, the court appointed, to get in there and help kids reunite with any alienated parent. And I've actually been really excited to expand into life coaching too, to do relational coaching. That way I'm not limited to just a license in Indiana. And I'm able to work with anybody internationally.
So you share, we had a great conversation yesterday, and we did a lot of just bonding before we started the show. Take the viewers down a little bit of how you really got into this, because you shared with me an impactful childhood journey. Share the viewers a little bit about that, because I think what happens is when we mention the word therapist, we fail to realize the key important word is you're still human. You still go through the same things as individuals as myself and others out there. Tell the viewers a little bit about your growing up, what it was like in your household.
So I grew up as one in 8 siblings. Now that was a blended family, so I have 3 step. Older, I have one fully biological brother. He's about 3 years older than me, and then I've got 3 half siblings. And so I was raised in a split home. So I went to dad's, every other weekend and stayed with my mom. Was raised in church, and that was, quite stable home. And then I moved away. When I was 17, I graduated high school, moved to Knoxville, Tennessee to go to college, and I had repressed trauma surface. I'll never forget the night when I was helping. I was always a therapist type. I didn't even know it.
Right.
But I was helping a friend go through a breakup, and I just started weeping.
Wow.
And she's like, "What in the world, LeLyne?" And I was like, "I had this memory of being sexually molested by a family member, but it doesn't make sense to me because this person was someone different than these memories." And she said, "LeLyne, a child doesn't make up those memories."
Right.
She said, "You need to go to counseling." And in that moment forever changed my life because I went through counseling. Andre, when I went into college, counseling was not even on my radar.
I think it's not on a lot of people's radar, to be honest. Yeah, it's probably on a lot of people's.
As a career path, let alone just going. So through the course of that counseling, and thankfully, like a lot of colleges, there was a free counseling center on the campus. And so I was able to go, and I didn't know how unstable I felt growing up. And so I started from a young age. My parents split up when I was about 1, and immediately I mean, within a week, my mom was remarried, and I was being disciplined by this man that I didn't know, I didn't have rapport with at all. But you know, you grow up as a kid, and it's just normal. It's
Right.
just normal. You just so I created these survival mechanisms,
Mm-hmm.
and so I began at 17 with this therapist to dismantle. Well, I first had to become aware
Right.
of, you know, I was very helpful.
What do you think it was? Not to cut you off, but what do you think it was with your friend that triggered? Because you're in the field now. What was the one thing that triggered that? Because she was having a problem with her boyfriend.
Great question.
So
Yeah. So she was going through a lot of grief. I mean, she thought she was going to marry this man, and then he broke up with her out of the blue. She was blindsided. But honestly, uh, I was there for her in, you know, she was experiencing a lot of emotion, displaying it. But I think really so much of our emotions and our intentions, in fact, 99.994% is of all of that is guided by our subconscious.
right,
Like we don't even know why we do what we do,
right,
right? So I think my subconscious brought the repressed memories to the surface because I was in an environment that was away from the abuse. I was 2 states away.
mm.
So it my subconscious knew I was safe
I
to
was going to say that
process
safe
it.
to process.
Yes. And this abuse I didn't even know. Like repressed memories, I just think is it's the body's way of knowing when we were not in a safe environment to process those. So I don't know what I would have done if those repressed memories hadn't been repressed.
How did you wind up dealing with it? The defragmentation of trying to get these pieces. When they start to defragmentize, did the faces of the perpetrators, the incidents, become more clairvoyant to you?
Mm-hmm. Like,
Did you know the individuals by then?
yes. Yeah, the individual's still in my family. So the therapist at the time was really, really pushing. You need to confront this individual. But I was scared to death of him saying you're lying, and then
Mm-hmm.
and abandonment. You know, as a child, I was told that my dad abandoned us. That now as an adult, I know that's not true, but it doesn't matter. I still have abandonment issues from that, and that's what my subconscious was afraid of. Was if I confront this individual, other people in my family are going to abandon me because he's going to say it's not true,
So
and I have no proof.
being silent appeared to be the best solution at that time, especially at 17 years old.
Right.
You know, I mean, you still haven't had a chance to process all this correctly because it takes a while to understand therapy, and I think a lot of people don't get that. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it took, and I pushed back. In fact, I quit counseling with that therapist because I felt she just kept pushing and pushing. Now, as a counselor, I understand why she did, but in fact, that makes me, in my opinion, an even better, more intuitive counselor
Why do you
because
think
I
that she
know
wanted you
pushing
to?
too much is
Why do
not
you think
okay.
she wanted you to push? Now that you're a therapist, why do you think?
I think she was young and she didn't know. Maybe she didn't know where else to go with therapy. Now I did progress to the point where I confronted him,
What happened?
you know? So we met at a restaurant.
Oh, you pick up the phone and call him?
I called him, yeah. I didn't have a cell phone yet at the time. So yeah, I called him and I said, hey, I didn't tell him why. But I mean, he was really close in my family. So he wasn't hard to get a hold of.
Okay.
But yeah, I met him at Chili's or someplace in Avon, and I said, "This happened, and I forgive you.
Wow.
But there's got to be healing done because I don't trust you, and you need to tell your wife." And I said, I know looking back, I was only 18 at the time. I'm like, damn, that took a lot of courage,
Yeah.
and I didn't know. I didn't know it took so much courage, but and so I said, by this time, and I don't remember, maybe a month. If she doesn't know, I'm going to tell her. Because they were young kids around. I didn't want, typically a perpetrator touches multiple children before they're caught, if they're ever caught. And so I wanted her to know so she could protect. If there hadn't been healing, right. I wanted her to be able to protect anybody around.
What age group? I mean, what age were you? Do you remember, and when did it stop?
So in that conversation, he said I was 11.
He admitted to it?
He did. He said, yes. In fact, there's never been a day that's gone by that I haven't thought about that.
That's what he said?
Yes. And I said, well, then why did you not bring it up to me? And he said, I didn't think you'd remember. I believe I was more like 9. And then that's the first time. It didn't happen only once. So the last time was when I was 15.
How was he able, now that the stuff is defragmented, and usually there's some clarity and more understanding where you can really sit down and have a conversation. How was he able to carry these acts out, with you, if this person was very well known in the family?
He was trusted a lot to take care of me when my mom was at work. There was too much trust there. And I remember, I'll never forget the first time it happened, or it only happened twice. So thankfully it wasn't a habit, but it was enough, right? It was my first sexual experience. So, I remember the first time it happened, and I ran, and I have a little sister. She's 5 years younger than me, and I ran and I woke her up, and I said, "This happened." She's 5. She was 4, at the time, if my memory serves me. And so I think she just rolled over and went back to sleep. But I don't remember ever thinking I need to tell someone, which to me, and then that next morning, he was just my family member again. It was just normal, right? So I think that's when my subconscious started repressing it, because it's a survival mechanism. How do I live and have a voice with someone who did that to me? I had to make it normal. I had to.
Did the same thing happen to your sister? You mentioned.
No.
Did you eventually tell your sister?
Yes. So everybody in my family, I would assume, knows. It's a rather big family. But yeah, when my siblings started, of course, I actually did tell my sister-in-law later, as the counseling was happening, right? I let her in. And then there was some confrontations when I got married. My husband wanted to talk to him, and then my brother got involved too. But yeah, I would tell siblings as they started having kids.
Did he have any anger? Because now he has to be fearful that his environment is about to change, because they know, and now they're looking at him. Did they eventually start to look at him in a different light? Did they start to excommunicate? And did he, I'm not a therapist, did he wind up regressing and blaming you for his situation now and people moving away from him?
Yes. So people moved away from me. They didn't move away from him. I think emotionally they moved away from him. But, and that goes into another story. I don't know how much you want me to share, but
this is a zone judgment free platform. This is, when you sit in that chair or any chair here, this is about you. This is your story. It may not impact everyone, but it may touch and impact one person. So you feel free to tell me whatever you want to.
I appreciate that. So that was around 2000. So fast forward, now I've got 4 kids, I'm married. I have a career here that I love. You know, we adopted a child out of foster care with severe issues. And Christmas Eve, my brother calls me. So this is my fully biological brother. So I've got a special bond with him, right?
Yeah.
You know, he knows what we went through, or what I went through more than anybody. And he said, LeLyne, I need to talk to you immediately. There's an affair going on in our family between my husband and his wife. So she was my best friend since I was 15. I called her my sister before they were ever married. She was the one that I told that I had been molested. So this is in 2016. They left the day after Christmas. They both filed for divorce the same day in 2017. And because there was an affair, he was full of shame, my husband. His name was Caleb. And so he started saying all of these rumors about me. I mean, I had been perfect. Who is in a marriage? We were together since I was 18, or best friends, and then we dated after 2 years of being best friends since I was 18. But though, I mean, we'd grown up together, so there's liable to be stupid stuff that I had done, right? And there were, you know, emotional conversations throughout the years, or in one in particular that I shouldn't have had with another man, like, and I confessed that to him, you know, but I don't think he ever was able to forgive himself. I think that he knew that he was completely wrong for having an affair, and that fractured my family because they were very close to him.
Wow.
Well, and because this man that had molested me was in my family, there was already a fracture because I was a symbol to his wife of his infidelity. They're still together to this day. And so that woman believed Caleb, now my ex, and she was very vocal
Really?
with these stories. These rumors about me being promiscuous throughout our marriage. I didn't have time. I had 4 kids.
You had 4 kids.
I had 4 kids. I had a practice. We were heavily involved in the church. I was like, I mean, I was impressed sometimes that I was with so many men. I mean, I wasn't, but like the rumors, I was like, how would I even have had time? So anyway, that fractured the family, and I think that woman took advantage of that these rumors about me was a way to get people on her side.
And to validate her stand in the marriage of dysfunction. Let's call it what it is.
Right. Right.
Because some people be like, hey, why didn't you leave? And it's easy to flip the script.
Yeah, absolutely.
And was there anybody in your family that, when you let me figure out a way to say this where it makes sense. You opened up Pandora's box. You could have kept it closed.
I could have.
But you opened it up. Who came to your side? Who carried the flag for justice for you?
My big brother.
Okay.
But he was broken through this because it was his wife. So he had gone to this man and said, have you ever apologized to LeLyne? Do you even know what you did? Like, what you actually did to her belief system, to her view of men. Are men safe? Like, all of those things, right? Our experiences, especially at such a young age, they create this belief system that guides our entire world, you know? And so my brother went to him and said, you never even apologized to her. Have you apologized to Caleb, her husband? Like, but during this, in 2016-17, my brother's world was broken, so he couldn't carry anything for me. So when this trust was fracturing people's opinions or the rumors, not the trust, but the rumors were fracturing people's trust of me, I didn't have energy to defend myself. My brother didn't. We were just kind of in a fog of like, what the hell do we do? And we were both also elders. My brother and I, we were both elders in a church. And so it even hurt the church of like, how does this happen to two elders, you know? And I think anytime a marriage is broken, people feel like they've got to take a side. They've got to know whose fault it was, and they don't know how to relate to both people still.
Speaking of that, how do you got a family, and thanks for coming on sharing this story. I can feel what you must be going through and what you went through. My question is, you touched on something here.
Mm-hmm.
The defragmentation that took place. It's almost like reliving your childhood when your mother left, remarried at 2 weeks later, new guy into the picture, total confusion, pandemonium.
Mm-hmm.
But let's go current to you now. Your husband now messing with your brother's wife, and now stories are being twisted to justify the wrong. How are the four kids? Does your brother have kids?
Yeah.
How are the kids sheltered? Are they bought up in this game of narcissistic dysfunction? And if so, you as a therapist, how do you defragment to get your family, your kids more so? Because you can't always correct an adult.
Right.
But how do you bring these kids into a safe environment and protect their minds from being mind fucked?
Yeah, that's a great question because I really fought hard. So in February, so it happened the day after Christmas, right? They both leave. In February, I'll never forget, I was meeting with clients at my practice. In fact, when this happened, I mean, I'm a marriage counselor. I'm a relationship counselor. How the hell do I go to work? You know? So I remember praying, like, God, surely you don't want me to work through this. And I remember distinctly him saying, I'm going to protect your clients from your brokenness.
Wow.
And that same week, I had 3 clients, or new, maybe that next 2 weeks, I had 3 brand new marriage counseling clients come in with this almost exact situation.
So now you're really...
Yeah, which was really cathartic.
I get
it was really cathartic for me because I could see it. At that point, I had to see it from outside.
You had to see it from the outside and go,
right, and I
how
had
do
to
I
see the
fix
hope
it?
in it.
Yeah.
But you asked about the kids, and I remember going back to my story. I remember being in my office, and my mom was watching my youngest. Her name's August. She's 12 now, but she was very young then. And she said, "Hey, I'm going to drop August off at the individual's house, my brother's wife, because I've got a tax appointment." What? My husband's mistress? Yes, she is her aunt, but right now she's my husband's mistress. And I was like, absolutely not. Will you? No. She needs to be sheltered. The people that were the big players in my life and my family at the time they did not understand my boundaries.
Right.
Because they were, I mean, my husband and my brother's wife were playing like it was a big family. Like on my husband's time with the kids, I mean, I would hear, oh, they were in Kroger today together, or they took the kids hiking, you know. But I was very staunch about absolutely not. They are so confused right now. Whose side are we on? We know an affair is not okay. I mean, and he sat them down. He sat my son down, my oldest. I think he was 12. Anyway, he was very young at the time. He sat him down and told him, oh, your mom's been unfaithful to me. My son even told me, he went on Facebook and said, this is a man she's having an affair with. And like 9 to my son, which none were true at all. And to this day, people believe that. People still believe I was unfaithful to him. So that's been a long time
How
coming
does
to rebuild that trust with my
how
son.
does a narcissistic person engage people enough to make people question? Now, these people had to be in your circle,
Right.
had to know your character.
Yes.
How can a person like that persuade individuals that know you to think the worst of you in your time of need and side with him?
Well, I think part of it, that's a great question because it's baffled me. People that have walked with me for years. I mean, I still am in communication on the way here. I was talking to my friend since I was 6 years old. Like, she never believed it, but I was baffled. But when a person tells a story with a lot of details, people tend to believe it. And that's what he would do. He would tell these stories of details. And the person that's going to control the narrative is the one that's talking first. And I wasn't talking, I was reeling. I imploded and thought, how do I protect these kids?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do I build stability out of this situation for my kids? And that was my focus. My focus was not on controlling the narrative or telling my story. In fact, one of my good friends is my brother-in-law, my little sister's husband, and I'll never forget, he called me from San Diego, California and said, LeLyne, you've got to start telling your story because other people are telling your story for you and people want to hear your story.
Don't let somebody else write your book.
Yes. And so I got on Facebook, and if you follow my Facebook, I'm not LeLyne Joyner on Facebook, I'm LeLyne Edens on Facebook, but social media, I started just telling parts of my story, and people loved it.
Yeah.
They wanted to hear my story because my story is one of perseverance through trauma, and that there's always hope in every situation, and I believe that fully. And so when a client comes in my office, I can actually say, actually, I've been where you're at, and let me tell you how I healed. Or let me tell you how I'm going to help you navigate through it. I don't just talk about me in my counseling session, but sometimes people want to hear.
I think your story makes good understanding for someone, and we talked about this. When you're going to get a counselor, don't be afraid to interview
Right.
the counselor.
Absolutely. Yes.
Don't go in there going, well, I want you to believe everything that I say, because that's not the sign of a good counselor. A good counselor can navigate you, give you solutions, give you worksheets, things to help you become better so you can be more productive in your mind, so you can have a clear thought. I'm going to ask you a question real quick. The people that you was in contact with for many years, have any of them ever came to you and said, I'm sorry, I should have known your character. I should have looked at the bigger picture. I should have sat down with you and had coffee, and I know your kids. I'm sorry for what I've done.
No. I think my brother-in-law would be the closest to that. But we had a few deaths in the family. So my divorce with Caleb was finalized in August of 2017. He died in November of 2017.
Wow.
Freak accident. Flashlight blew up in his mouth. He died
Wow.
then. And so when someone dies, what happens at their funeral?
Everybody brings flowers and act like they were your best friend and you could never do no wrong.
Exactly. So everything he said became gospel when he died. I mean, he was perfect. He was, when he had this affair in front of all of Indianapolis, and he never repented from it, right? He just went with these lies and villainized me, which was effective. But
wouldn't it be nice if life had the ending of the movie with Robin Williams, the final cut, where people can really
Yes.
see. Yeah, the final
What
cut was
actually happened.
the final cut was so good because the same thing happened in that movie where the guy had the affairs. He was narcissistic, and only Robin Williams knew the real deal about that. How do you move on? How do you move on with your life?
Forgiveness. You forgive like how like your life depends on it. You forgive. And forgiveness is not saying I forgive and never thinking about it again. In fact, just like a good surgeon, if I go in there, if I go into surgery, the surgeon, if there's a wound, the surgeon is going to make sure there is no infection before he, sews it up.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's any ounce of infection, in this case, resentment, anger, grief, hurt, pain, if there's any ounce of it, it's going to grow under the surface,
Mm-hmm.
right? And an infection grows so long and it'll take you out. You'll die from it. So that's the same with forgiveness is you have to carefully inspect the wound. And that's what people don't do. They don't want that because it's excruciating sometimes for us to look at the wound. But for me, in fact, one of my best friends, and this is going to sound crazy, okay? But one of my best friends to this day is the woman that my husband had an affair with.
Really?
But you better believe we had very painful, tear-filled, apology-filled conversation after conversation, and but and I don't have to be her friend. Like
Right.
there's nothing. In fact, people think I'm so weird that I'm her friend again, and I get it. From the outside, it looks insane.
Why are you a
but
friend again?
we worked toward that, and that was a decision I made. That is not an emotional reaction I felt pressured to. Because I think anyone in my life would have said, of course you're not a friend, you know, kick her out of your life completely. She deserves it, and that's fair.
Why did you make the decision to bring her back into your life? Was that a part of the let's just call it 5 step of healing?
No, it was not part of it. Because I think sometimes when trust is severely broken, like for example, the man that molested me and his wife, I don't have any relationship. I've forgiven, but I don't have any relationship with them. So because they didn't ever truly acknowledge, like humbly acknowledge and take ownership of how I had been hurt. And so to me, I can't rebuild trust with you. I can forgive you, and so I don't judge, but I say no, I'll never have a relationship. But my ex-sister-in-law was truly sorry, and she let me talk. She let me say, here's what I experienced, and so that rebuilt trust. And sometimes I still want to have strict boundaries, Forgiveness it's a lifestyle choice. It's not a one-time thing and then it's over. I'm looking square at the pain that was caused, and I'm saying, yes, I'm not going to hold it over her head. I'm not going to think poorly of her. I'm not going to speak poorly of her. I'll tell the truth.
Right.
But I'm not going to hate her because that takes up emotional energy from me. And I've made plenty of mistakes in my life, and I want grace too. But she's not a danger to me because she has owned it. She's taken responsibility for it, and she's humbly worked at rebuilding that trust. And when I put up a boundary, she honors it. If I say, hey, I'm not going to talk to you about this, she honors that. But conversely, with the couple where the man molested me, they have zero respect for my boundaries. And so, in fact, we went to counseling together when I think 2018, 2019, because I said you can't have any relationship with my kids because you're talking shit about me to people, and you don't even know. You've never come to me and said, what happened? What's your side? How are you? None of that. And the counselor looked at me and said, they'll never love you the way you need to be loved. And so to me, it was like, hey, I've done my part. And, I'll see them at family weddings and things like that. And the most amazing thing happens inside of me. I feel this compassion, like, I'm so sorry you're stuck.
Right.
You know, you're stuck in something I was innocent in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was 9. It wasn't my fault that he touched me. But you're stuck in hating me. I have to be the villain so that you guys can stay married. You know, it's like this facade. Somebody's got to be the villain. So I have looked at it from their perspective, and I think that's an important part of forgiveness is challenging my perspective, because I have a very specific way I look at the world based on what I've experienced and my belief system and my woundings, and you know, and that's not the right perspective all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding, and we'll never fully understand somebody else's perspective, but I can appreciate, like, okay, you know, I can appreciate their perspective. I wouldn't have the same, most likely, you know, I'll do the work to forgive and humble myself. But I have compassion when I see them, but I have no desire to reconcile because there's no trust there.
Now, how do you mentioned a little bit before we wrap up? You mentioned a little bit about your kids, and because of the situation is still really not set boundaries. How do you navigate with your kids?
Regarding forgiveness or regarding
well what they, you know, because they're a part of this situation, because there is really no honoring of your boundaries with this individual, this married couple. Your kids still have to come through there. How they're getting they're getting all kind of misleading information. How do you make sure that they're healthy and not filled with corrupted bullshit?
Yeah. Well, as soon as my son came and told me, he said, "Mom, this person said you're a liar and a manipulator." And this was in 2017. So Caleb was still alive, and, you know, the affair is still going on. And I went to her and I said, because up until that point, I let them have alone time. I let her, not him, I let her have alone time sometimes with my kids. And I confronted her and I said, you can think whatever you want about me, but don't you bring my kids into it. Their world is shattered. They don't know who to trust. And now you said you can't trust your mom, you know. In fact, my son became suicidal, he told me, because he didn't know where to turn, you know. And so I got them into counseling, and I would have very frank conversations, you know, because their world had been opened up to infidelity. And that was unfortunate, but he actually set them down when I was meeting with my pastor and told them, I'm having an affair with your aunt. And so he opened that world up. I couldn't hide that from them. I'm not sure I would have, but so yeah, I just started being frank with them. I wouldn't put my emotions on them. I would cry with them. I would tell them, I'm so sorry, you know, how do we honor your dad? And to this day, I don't dishonor him.
Right.
I'll tell the truth, but I don't dishonor him, because what's the purpose? He was broken. He made stupid choices and hurt himself as much as he hurt me. He hurt himself. I don't think he ever forgave himself, even, you know, until the point he died. So with them, I gave them information at points that I felt like guarded them from lies. And then I put up strict boundaries, like and this is the ripple effect on my siblings too, because some of my siblings would not guard their tongues around my kids. They wouldn't honor me because they believed the bullshit. And so I said, hey, you can't be around my kids. If you're bringing more drama and dumping your feelings onto them, I'm going to guard them. They're my number one priority. You're an adult. You go deal with it with a therapist or with me. I'll sit down and have a frank conversation. I would love to tell my side of the story, you know. And it's amazing how many people walk away without getting your side of the story. Like, I don't understand why people do that. I'm so curious. I want to know your side. I want to know everybody's side.
Well, you're the therapist, so
That's true. I have a different way of living sometimes.
on a lighter note, and thanks for coming and share that story. That
Absolutely.
was very heartfelt, and you, I know it can be difficult being vulnerable, and especially the fact that you're a therapist. On a lighter note, what are some of the things that you're doing to address what you've gone through and help others with your practice? And how can the viewers reach out to you for counseling help or even share your story on other platforms?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. LeLyne Edens, Edens. That's actually my maiden name. Um, so you can find me there. My website is lelyne.com. It's LELYNE.com. But with clients, I their story is so important that I help them give themselves a voice again. You know, so many of us, and like me, I held all that trauma in, and so I lost my voice. I started becoming really helpful to people so that I was viewed as important. And so that's one thing in my office that I do every day with clients is figure out, no matter your experience, you may not have been molested, you may not have been through a divorce, but your belief system was created by experiences and by the specific culture of your home. And two people can live and grow up side by side and next door to each other and have two completely different cultures in their home, right?
Mm.
How do you deal with conflict? How do your parents show affection to each other? Those all create these belief systems about what marriage is, what are men like, what are moms like, and so those guide us. And so I break down, what do you actually believe? Okay, you say that you know that God is good or that you trust men, but you're living a different way. So what do you actually believe? You know?
Mm.
Um, so breaking those down, then we can we can create a belief system that's closer to reality, and then live in freedom. You know, just challenging our own perspective gives us so much freedom.
Mm.
Because I can say, we like to categorize people. Like I mentioned, I'm the villain in some people's minds.
Right.
You know, I still am to this day in Caleb's family's mind. They believe all this bullshit about me. But when we give ourselves the gift of challenging our own perspective of situations, say, wait a minute, maybe I'm not right in this.
Right.
Maybe because of my biased view of men or of marriage, I'm thinking a completely wrong way. What about how they think? Or why would they do what they did? We're not losing anything
Mm-hmm.
besides time and energy, but we're gaining wisdom of how this other person might view this, and maybe they're closer to reality than we are. So that's what I help clients, and of course I'm a big believer in forgiveness. That's not attached to reconciliation. It's a completely different entity all its own. But that frees me. Now I have so much more emotional space to love because I'm not holding a part of my heart in resentment.
Mm.
Because then that colors everybody. Like, that colors all of my relationships. You can't resent someone in hiding. It's going to touch. It's pervasive. It's going to touch all relationships. So, as you can tell, I'm really passionate about what I do because
I'm listening.
I know the freedom. I live the freedom. It's not easy. Forgiving is not easy, but it's worth every ounce of energy. So, I take people through that in my life coaching, and relational coaching, and then in my therapy practice too. So it's so rewarding. I love it. I love what I do.
I can see the passion coming out of you now. So we went down the rabbit hole and came out smiling. That's exactly what I wanted to see happen today. Leave the viewers with something positive before we wrap up today's show.
So anybody who hears part of my story, I want to know there's hope. I want you to know there's hope. Like, your story may not look like mine. It may not sound like mine, but there is hope through it. Don't give up. Don't get stuck in the grief, or or in the anger and the resentment, it doesn't protect you. Forgiveness protects you. So don't, it may take a while to get out of, and that's okay. We all have our own journey, but you have the opportunity to learn so much through heartache and through pain, and the freedom coming out of it is so worth all of the effort that you've got to put into your healing, but you're worth it. Your kids are going to glean something. If you've got kids, you know, the people around you are going to experience more joy from you, but you are worth it, even if it doesn't touch anybody else's life. Your healing is worth every ounce of energy, so go after it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show.